Hey there, and welcome to the Magic Snail Channel. This is where we share real life stories about people dealing with all kinds of situations. Some are funny, some are messy, and some are downright unbelievable. If you like hearing stories that feel real and keep you curious, you'll feel right at home here. So go ahead, like the video, and subscribe to the channel if you want more. We've got plenty of stories waiting for you.
For 8 straight months, every attempt I made to get physically close to my wife was gently dismissed. She'd always offer some variation of the same reasoning. It wasn't my fault. She just hadn't been feeling like herself. Maybe it was hormonal. Maybe work was weighing her down. She wasn't really sure. What she did know was that the desire just wasn't there lately. At first, I tried to be understanding. I figured, hey, every relationship goes through ups and downs. It's normal to have off periods. So I backed off, kept calm, and did my best to be there for her. But when it dragged on for 8 months, that wasn't just a temporary low. It became the new normal. That's when other things started standing out. She was constantly on her phone, smiling at messages and tapping away like she was in her own world. The moment I entered the room, the screen would go dark. Her appearance changed too. Suddenly, she was dressing more provocatively, putting extra effort into her makeup, spending ages getting ready. Odd choices for someone who claimed she had no interest in physical connection. Everything turned upside down during a casual barbecue at a friend's place. We were standing by the grill just talking when he offhandedly mentioned seeing my wife at a bar downtown the Friday before. He said she didn't seem the least bit shy about attracting male attention. She was giggling, getting handsy with some guy, leaning in close like they were sharing secrets. The kicker? She'd told me she was spending a quiet night at her sister's. That's when the realization sank in. She wasn't lacking desire, she was just choosing where to direct it, and clearly, I wasn't on that list. I kept quiet that evening. No confrontations, no drama. Instead, I started paying attention. Every little lie, every made-up story, every time she said she'd be one place but ended up in another, I documented all of it. I watched how glued she was to her phone, how protective she became over her schedule, and how suddenly everything about her turned guarded and private. A week later, I suggested a dinner date, just the two of us. I figured maybe reconnecting would help spark something. Her answer came fast and felt scripted. Babe, I'm just not in that mindset right now. Still no interest. Can we just stay in and watch something instead? But just hours later, I watched her spend 2 full hours doing her hair and makeup to go out with her girlfriends. Short dress, high heels, full glam. For someone claiming total disinterest in romance, she sure didn't look the part. I started testing her. I'd suggest events or restaurants. She'd always decline. But when her friends asked her to the same places, suddenly she was eager and ready. The pattern became undeniable once I started looking closely. The final straw was a receipt I found tucked in her purse from a hotel bar downtown. It was from the same night she claimed to be exhausted from working late. The timestamp showed she was out past midnight. That night, as she slept next to me, I made up my mind. If she wanted to play games, fine. I'd play too. But I'd play smart. No more playing the clueless husband while she ran around behind my back. I saw two paths: continue accepting her lies, or stand up and uncover the truth. The old version of me would have sat down for a heart-to-heart, would have bought her excuses, would have tried to fix what she was actively destroying. But I wasn't that guy anymore. If she had no desire for her own husband, maybe it was time she had no husband to reject. When I woke up the next morning, I had a plan. I didn't want to confront her without proof. I wanted certainty. And once I had it, she was going to learn what happens when you deceive someone who's done being fooled. She didn't see it coming, but she was about to find out that some betrayals have a cost, and some husbands don't forgive being disrespected. That Monday, I made 3 calls that would set everything in motion. First, I called a private investigator. Then, a divorce lawyer. And finally, I contacted my bank. Finding an investigator turned out to be easier than expected. I read reviews, looked at credentials, and found one who specialized in domestic cases. I met him at his office and laid out the whole situation: her lies, the weird behavior, the bar receipt. He listened carefully, no judgment, and broke it down for me. Most cheaters think they're slick, he said, but they usually follow patterns. If she's not being honest about her intimacy levels and where she's spending her time, There's probably a lot more going on than she's letting on. I hired him immediately. His task was straightforward: follow her, take notes, and get me solid proof of what she was really doing when she said she wasn't in the mood for anything. My meeting with the attorney opened my eyes even more. He explained the legal side, what counted as evidence, how to cover my assets, and what steps to take to protect myself. If you're serious about moving forward, he told me, then you need to plan smart. Get documentation, protect your money. Don't let your emotions do the talking. That was the wake-up call I needed. I started locking things down, opened a new account at another bank, and rerouted my paychecks there, slowly over time so nothing looked suspicious. I wasn't hiding money illegally. I was making sure I didn't get blindsided financially. I also made copies of everything that mattered: financial records, insurance info, property titles, tax paperwork. I stored it all in a private safety deposit box she didn't know existed. If this turned ugly, I was going to be ready for it. 3 days after I hired him, the private investigator reached out with news I expected, but it still knocked the wind out of me. She's definitely not spending Friday nights at her sister's place, he began. This past week alone, she's hit up 3 different bars. Not once was she alone. Same guy every time. And it's obvious, they're way more than just friends. He forwarded several photos. There was my wife, the same woman who kept claiming she had no interest in physical closeness, sitting intimately beside some guy at a bar. One image showed his hand resting on her thigh in a way that left little room for misinterpretation. Another caught her leaning in, whispering into his ear while he smiled. But that wasn't even the whole picture. There's something else, the investigator added. She's visited his apartment twice this week, spent several hours there each time. I've got time-stamped photos of her going in and later coming out. I stared at my phone, feeling like the ground had dropped beneath me. This was the same woman who avoided kissing me goodnight, who brushed off every gesture of closeness with claims that she just wasn't in the right headspace. Yet here she was, clearly making an effort, just not for me. My attorney had warned me to stay level-headed, not to let emotions cloud my judgment. And oddly enough, I didn't feel rage. What settled over me was a cold, steady sense of understanding, the clarity you feel when you realize you've been lied to by someone who thinks you are too naive to catch on. I called the investigator back without hesitation. I want a full report, I told him. See if you can dig into her phone history, get more visuals, build out a detailed timeline of her movements. I want to know exactly what she's been doing, and when. That'll take another week or two, he replied. But based on what I already have, you'll have more than enough evidence to work with. While the investigation continued, I played my part at home with absolute calm. I didn't change a thing about how I acted around her. No pointed questions. No signs that I suspected anything. When she claimed she was heading out for a girls' night, I simply smiled and said, "Enjoy yourself." Meanwhile, I knew full well who she was meeting, and where. The hardest moments were those late-night returns. She'd waltz through the door and sit on the couch, casually chatting about what she and the girls did that evening. She'd describe a fictional dinner or movie, complete with fake laughter and details she likely rehearsed. Sometimes she'd yawn and say she was exhausted or stressed, another excuse for why she couldn't be intimate with me. I just nodded, warm and supportive as ever. Sure, babe, get some sleep. We'll talk tomorrow. But inside, I was recording everything. Every lie she fed me became another entry in the growing log I was compiling. While the PI built the physical proof, I built the emotional record, one falsehood at a time. 2 weeks in, I had the complete picture. She'd been sneaking around with this man for at least 4 months. She'd been to his apartment over a dozen times. They'd gone out to dinner, shared drinks, and even taken a weekend getaway, one she had described to me as a work seminar. The woman who claimed to be too drained for her own husband was, in reality, juggling a secret affair. And she assumed I was too soft, too trusting, or too oblivious to catch on. She was wrong. Exactly 3 weeks after the investigation began, a thick manila envelope landed on my desk. It was everything I'd asked for and more. The investigator had gone above and beyond. Inside was a mountain of evidence, dozens of high-quality photographs, a comprehensive timeline of her whereabouts, and even recorded conversations from public settings where she met the other man. Each piece was time-stamped, location-tagged, and annotated with careful notes. The photos painted the betrayal in painful clarity. There she was, entering his apartment building at 2:07 p.m. on a Tuesday, a day she'd texted me to say she was working late. Another showed them kissing in his car, parked outside a trendy restaurant. And then came the hotel check-in photo, taken during what she claimed was an out-of-town business trip. But the audio recording was what hit the hardest. The investigator had tailed them to a quiet coffee shop and managed to record their conversation from the table next to theirs. I plugged in my earbuds and hit play. Hearing her voice in that setting, relaxed, laughing, completely at ease, made my stomach tighten. "He's so clueless," she said, giggling. "I told him I have zero libido, and he just took it at face value. Doesn't even question it anymore." "It's honestly kind of sad how understanding he is." The guy laughed. "He's not getting suspicious with how often you're gone." She scoffed. "Nope, I just say I'm at my sister's or hanging with friends. He's way too trusting. And he's always trying to be the supportive husband. Doesn't want to seem jealous or controlling, so he avoids asking questions." I had to pause. My ears were ringing. I felt like I'd just been punched in the gut. The woman I'd defended, supported, waited for. She wasn't just cheating. She was mocking me for being kind. I wasn't her partner anymore. I was a running joke in her personal sitcom. Still, I forced myself to keep listening. "The best part," she continued, "is how he keeps trying. He plans dates, suggests romantic dinners, and I just tell him I'm not feeling it. He looks so disappointed, but he never argues. It's perfect." Her lover asked, "So what's the end game here? You think you can keep this up?" She gave a casual laugh. "Honestly, I'll just tell him it's hormonal or some emotional phase. Guys don't get that stuff. As long as I play the medical or mental angle, he won't push." I yanked the earbuds out. That was enough. She hadn't just betrayed our marriage, she'd ridiculed it, and me along with it. The report also included a complete breakdown of her double life over the past 4 months. While I was being brushed off, she was meeting her side piece roughly 3 times a week. Sometimes it was casual, a lunch date, a quick visit to his apartment. Other times it was longer, overnight stays disguised as business travel or family obligations. It wasn't random, it was orchestrated, planned, deceptive by design. This wasn't just infidelity. This was a masterclass in deception. She didn't simply stray from our marriage. She carefully wove a web of lies, convincing me that I was the problem for still wanting to be close to my own wife. I spread out the photographs across my desk like puzzle pieces, each one a painful fragment of a truth I could no longer deny. Staring back at me was proof, unmistakable and raw, that her desire hadn't disappeared. It had just found a new direction, and it sure wasn't toward me. My lawyer had warned me this day would come. "Once you get confirmation," he advised, "don't make decisions based on anger. Step back. Think. Then act strategically, not emotionally." I took that advice to heart. After reviewing every photo and document, I carefully returned them to the envelope and locked it away in my private deposit box. Then I went home like it was any other day. When she asked about my afternoon, I said it was uneventful. When she casually mentioned another night out with her sister, I smiled and said, "Enjoy." But in my head, everything had shifted. The evidence was there, images, audio, and a timeline that shattered every lie she'd fed me for months. I had already spoken with a lawyer, moved my money into a separate account, and created a solid legal buffer. I wasn't just gathering proof. I was protecting my future. She thought she held all the cards in some clever little game, but she didn't realize the rules had already changed. While she was out pretending to be something she wasn't, I sat at home that night and reviewed everything once more. The photos, the timeline, her voice on that recording. I wanted to absorb every single detail before making my move. In those images, she didn't look distant or unwell. She looked vibrant. She laughed. She leaned in. She beamed like a woman enjoying herself without a single care. This wasn't someone dealing with health problems or emotional burnout. This was someone who had made a conscious decision to prioritize someone else over the life we built. And she was about to find out that choices come with consequences, especially when those choices involve betraying someone who loved her unconditionally. For 8 long months, I had been the guy who gave her space, who tried to be supportive, who kept believing that her distance was about stress or hormones. But every man has a breaking point, and I had officially reached mine. I waited until Friday night to confront her. She had just gotten back from one of her regular girls' nights, repeating the same tired routine, sighing, rubbing her temples, claiming she was exhausted and overwhelmed. It was the perfect setup. Hey, I said, settling into the chair across from her in the living room. Can we talk for a few minutes? I've been thinking a lot about our relationship. She glanced up from her phone, probably bracing for another awkward conversation about our intimacy drought. Of course, she replied, acting casual. What's on your mind? I reached for the folder I had prepped earlier that day. Well, I began, keeping my tone calm. I've been concerned about the way things have been between us. 8 months is a long time to go without physical closeness. So I started looking into it, reading up, researching the causes. Her expression softened. She must have thought I was going to suggest therapy or ask about seeing a doctor. That's really thoughtful of you, she said gently. I found some patterns, I continued, flipping open the folder. For instance, women who completely lose their libido typically don't spend 3 nights a week at downtown bars with the same man. The color drained from her face. She sat up, now alert, but I didn't stop. I laid the first photo on the table in front of her, a shot of her and her affair partner sharing a drink, his hand tenderly placed over hers. This one was taken last Tuesday, I said. That same night you told me you were too exhausted for anything because of a late night at work. She stared, stunned. Her mouth opened slightly like she was trying to form a sentence. I can explain. No need, I cut her off, already placing the next photo down. This one of them kissing inside his car. That was Wednesday night. You said you were having dinner with your sister. One by one, I laid the photos down like a prosecuting attorney. Each one was a visual contradiction to the lies she'd repeated so casually. I watched her breathing speed up, her composure slipping. Oh, where did these come from? She finally asked, her voice strained. I hired a private investigator 3 weeks ago, I said evenly. Turns out women with zero libido typically don't check into hotels with men who aren't their husband. I placed the hotel photo on top of the pile. Her hands began to tremble. But what really stood out, I added, pulling out my phone, was something he recorded at a cafe near 5th Street. I hit play on the audio. Her voice came alive in the room, clear as day, as she laughed about how easy it was to fool me. I heard her say how pathetic I was for buying into her story, how she used my trust like a shield to do whatever she wanted. She turned pale. You recorded me? No, I said calmly. You recorded yourself in public, loud enough for a stranger to hear. He just happened to be documenting your behavior. I leaned back and let the silence hang as she absorbed it all. There was nowhere to hide. She knew now that I had seen everything, heard everything, and connected every dot. All the nights I'd blamed myself. She had turned my compassion into a joke. How long have you known? She asked in a quiet, shaken voice. Long enough, I replied. Long enough to call a lawyer, move my finances, and compile 4 months of evidence. Long enough to protect myself before you could spin another lie. Tears began to roll down her cheeks, but I didn't flinch. These weren't tears of regret. These were tears of exposure. It's not what it looks like, she said, grasping at straws. It didn't mean anything. I was just confused about us. Stop, I said firmly. Don't insult me any further. I've heard the recordings. I've seen the pictures. I've read the lies in your own handwriting. I know exactly what it meant to you. She tried shifting tactics. We can fix this. We can go to therapy. I'll end it with him right now. I almost laughed in disbelief. This isn't about him, I said. This isn't about the guy you've been sneaking around with. It's about what you did to our marriage. You made a mockery of it. And I was the punchline. I stood up and calmly began gathering the photographs back into the folder. You told me you had no interest in intimacy. You made me question myself, made me wonder if I was unreasonable for wanting closeness with the woman I married. You twisted my patience and trust into tools while you carried on a separate life behind my back. Please, she whispered, reaching for my arm, her voice trembling. I made a terrible mistake. I can fix this. I stepped out of reach, not flinching. This wasn't some slip-up or moment of weakness. It was intentional. Every fabricated story was a conscious decision. Every time you turned me away while sneaking off to be with him, that was deliberate. Every joke you cracked at my expense, every time you laughed behind my back, it was all on purpose. She was falling apart now, tears pouring down her face, but I felt nothing. The woman collapsing in front of me wasn't the one I married. That woman, the woman I once believed in, would never have orchestrated this level of betrayal. So what happens now? She asked through sobs. Now, I said coldly, you find out what life without a husband looks like. You wanted to keep your lover while enjoying the benefits of a loyal husband, the one who paid the bills, kept quiet, and never dug too deep. But you don't get both anymore. I walked toward the door, pausing just long enough to deliver the final blow. My attorney told me I have more than enough for the divorce. All the documents are ready. The money's been moved to a new account. Since your boyfriend's been enjoying what should have been mine, maybe he can start paying for your lifestyle too. You can't just walk out like this, she snapped, rising to her feet. This is our home. No, it's not, I said without missing a beat. It's my house. Bought it before we were married. The deed's in my name, verified by my lawyer. This was never ours. It was mine the whole time. The look on her face was pure disbelief. For the first time, she realized she'd miscalculated. She thought she had power, but she didn't even understand the playing field. I gave you everything, I said quietly. My loyalty, my patience, my support, all while you made me feel like I was asking for too much. I believed your lies, defended your excuses, and convinced myself that your distance was my fault. I reached for the doorknob. But your biggest mistake? You thought I was too blind, too soft, too naive to catch on. You misread the man you married. Some people you can manipulate. I'm not one of them. But I didn't leave right away. I sat back down and watched her unravel. The woman who'd been confidently orchestrating her double life was now flailing, desperate, panicked, helpless. Wait, please, she said, scrambling for control. Just give me a chance to explain. I'll end things with him. I'll delete his number. I swear I'll cut off all contact. I stared at her like someone listening to a bad sales pitch, unimpressed and unmoved. You really think he's the issue here? I asked flatly. You think that if you just block his number, all of this disappears? She nodded frantically, grasping at any hope. Yes, I wasn't thinking clearly. It meant nothing. I just got caught up in something stupid. Nothing? I cut in sharply. You think 4 months of secret hotel meetups, whispered lies, and mocking your husband behind his back adds up to nothing? Every time you came home and smiled in my face after spending the night with him, that meant nothing? Her face fell apart. I didn't mean what I said to him. I was just trying to seem cool. So let me get this straight, I said slowly. You were lying to him about how you felt about lying to me? That's your defense? She began pacing the room, voice cracking as she tried to regain her footing. What do you want me to do? Tell me how to fix this. I'll do anything. You can't fix this, I said, emotionless. You're not dealing with a problem. You're facing the consequences of your actions. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and showed her the screen. You see this? That's my new bank account. All my income is now directed there. The joint account has just enough to carry your expenses for the next 30 days, she gasped, blinking at the screen. You can't be serious. I need access to our money. Our money? I raised an eyebrow. I've been the only one earning it while you've been busy elsewhere. Why should I keep funding a life I've been excluded from? She sank onto the couch like the air had been sucked from the room. This is crazy. You're going nuclear over a mistake. A mistake? I nearly laughed. You want to know what a mistake is? A mistake is forgetting an anniversary, sending a message to the wrong group chat. What you did was premeditated. You didn't stumble into this. You built an entire alternate life, and I was just the fool paying for it. I walked to the window and stared out, gathering my breath before turning back. You know what's pathetic? If you'd been honest with me, if you'd told me you weren't happy, we could have worked through it, or ended things respectfully. But instead you lied. You fed me the story that I was the problem. I never said that, she whispered. You didn't need to, I replied. Every time you turned me down and claimed you weren't feeling it, you implied that wanting my own wife made me needy or selfish. You chipped away at my self-worth, and you never even noticed. She went silent. For the first time, the reality of what she'd done seemed to register. How long have you been planning this? She asked, her voice faint. Planning what? I said. The background checks, the financial separation. The divorce filing? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. I started preparing the day I realized something was off. The difference between us, I confronted the issue. You ran from it and sought comfort in someone else. You wanted escape. I wanted truth. Her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it instinctively, then flipped it over quickly. Too late. I saw it. Let me guess, I said, eyes narrowed. He's wondering why you're not texting back tonight. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Here's how this plays out, I said, sitting again with the calm of a man who'd already won. My lawyer's filing on Monday. The case is strong. The evidence is stacked. You'll leave with what you brought into this marriage. Everything else stays with me. Her voice cracked again. Where am I supposed to go? I didn't hesitate. Why don't you ask your boyfriend? He's enjoyed the perks for months. Maybe it's time he steps up and supports the lifestyle he's been sharing. Her face turned ghostly white. You don't get it, she said quietly. It wasn't serious with him. We never talked about anything deep. I stared at her, my voice cold and steady. So you're telling me the guy you've been seeing 3 times a week for 4 months, the same one you've been sleeping with while shutting me out, never once discussed anything meaningful with you? She lowered her eyes, staring into her lap. It was just fun, she mumbled. I didn't mean for it to get messy. Well, I said, folding my arms, it's officially messy now. You can't have a husband for financial comfort and a boyfriend for thrills. At some point, you have to pick a lane. I turned toward the staircase. I'm going to grab a few things and check into a hotel tonight. You might want to use this time to think very hard about what happens next. Because come Monday morning, everything changes. Please, she called after me, her voice cracking. Don't do this. I love you. I made a huge mistake, but I love you. I stopped halfway up the stairs and turned. No, I said slowly. You love what I provided. You love the stability, the safety net. You love having someone reliable to pick up the pieces while you go live out some secret fantasy. But you didn't love me. If you had, you wouldn't have spent 4 months tearing me down while giving someone else everything you told me you didn't have left. As I continued upstairs, I heard her behind me. What if I prove I've changed? What if I show you that I'm choosing you now? I opened the closet and calmly began packing. You've already shown me where your loyalty lies. Every time you lied, every time you disappeared and came back pretending to be devoted, that was your choice. I zipped my bag and moved toward the door. The difference is, now you get to live with those choices, and I get to move forward without them. By 9 a.m. Monday, I was sitting in my lawyer's office. By 10, the divorce paperwork was officially filed. By noon, she was served, at her job. My investigator recommended serving her in public, and I saw the wisdom in that. She wanted attention and drama. Now she got it, front row. That day, she called me 17 times. I didn't answer a single one. What followed in the next few weeks exposed her true nature. Once she realized I wasn't coming back and that there was no chance at reconciliation, the apologetic version of her disappeared. In her place was someone angry, entitled, and arrogant. She hired a lawyer of her own and demanded half of everything, even the house she never paid a cent toward. But her attorney wasn't a fool. Once he saw the documented affair and financial dependency, he knew she didn't have a leg to stand on. Adultery backed by hard evidence doesn't play well in court, especially when paired with proof of manipulation. The turning point came during the spousal support hearing. She had requested temporary alimony, painting herself as the victim. But once the judge heard the recordings, her ridiculing my trust, laughing about how pathetic I was, he shut it down immediately. Turns out judges don't take kindly to people who manipulate and mistreat their partner, then try to cash in on it. Meanwhile, her fling crumbled in record time. Within 2 weeks of being served, her boyfriend ghosted her. Apparently, he liked sneaking around with a married woman, not supporting one. The moment she became single and emotionally needy, he bailed. She tried reaching out again, this time through mutual friends, claimed she had changed, claimed she wanted to fix things. I didn't respond, but I made sure those friends knew the whole truth. Not to smear her, but to protect them. If she was going to manipulate someone, it wasn't going to be me again. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. She walked away with her personal items and the car, the one she still had payments on. I kept the house, my retirement, and most importantly, my dignity. The settlement reflected the truth of what she brought to the marriage. Nothing. 3 months after it was finalized, I bumped into her at the grocery store. She looked drained, hollow. She tried to approach, called out my name, but I kept walking. I had nothing left to offer her, not even words. Later, I heard she'd moved back in with her parents. Money tight and job prospects slimmer than ever. The fantasy life she built had finally collided with reality. And reality doesn't play nice. My life, on the other hand, had never been better. I had peace. I had clarity. I had the kind of quiet that comes when you no longer have to second guess every word spoken at your dinner table. I had forgotten what it felt like to live without walking on eggshells, to feel free in my own home. 6 months after the final papers were signed, I met someone new. Someone refreshingly honest, direct, and emotionally grounded. Someone who didn't treat a relationship like a performance. The contrast was night and day. When this woman said she was exhausted, she truly was. When she told me she was meeting her friends, she actually was. When she said she loved me, I could feel it in the way she acted, not just in the words. Only then did I fully realize the emotional toll my ex had taken on me. It wasn't just the cheating. It was the daily erosion of trust, the emotional neglect, the mental gymnastics she made me do just to justify staying. But it taught me something. Trust is not free. It's earned. And when someone burns that trust over and over, they don't deserve another chance to do it again. People sometimes ask me whether I regret how I handled it, if I was too cold, too ruthless, too final. I always answer the same way. I gave her 8 months of unwavering patience, 8 months of grace, of believing her lies, of defending her to myself while she laughed behind my back. She had all the chances in the world to be honest, to tell me she was unhappy, to leave with integrity. Instead, she chose to betray, manipulate, and humiliate me. She made me feel broken while handing her affection to someone else. She turned our marriage into a private joke, and I was the punchline. So when she insisted she had zero libido, I granted her wish and removed the husband from the equation. She wanted the perks of being married while acting like she was single. But that's not how this works. Some people say I handled it with cold calculation. I say I delivered justice. She thought she had the upper hand, but she never realized I was playing a different game altogether. In the end, she got what she clearly wanted: complete freedom to do whatever she pleased without a husband standing in the way. She just didn't expect that the financial security she'd taken for granted would vanish with the marriage she blew up. She told me she had zero libido, so I gave her zero husband. And looking back, that was the healthiest decision I've ever made.